Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Ellen Duysen, and I am the Coordinator and Outreach Specialist for the Central State Center for Agricultural Safety and Health at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I am presenting information today in collaboration with Elayne Saejung, the Emergency Preparedness Director at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, Linda Emanuel with AgriSafe Network, and Natalie Roy with AgriSafe Network. I sure wish that we were in beautiful Asheville listening to this presentation, but this is certainly the next best thing, I think. So thank you for joining today. My topic today is After the Storm, Creation of an Agricultural Flood Disaster Recovery and Preparedness Toolkit. In March of 2019, the Midwest region experienced flooding that was beyond devastating. We had flooding from a bomb cyclone that was followed by heavy rains and a rapid increase in temperature. Temperature in some areas went up 30 degrees in a little over 24 hours. And what that resulted in was huge ice flows breaking apart and coming down river. This picture is a picture of the Spencer Dam in Nebraska. It was breached on March 14th. It became the first dam in the United States to ever be breached by ice flows. The resulting flows came downstream. In addition to the ice, there were large volumes of water from ice dams that had been, the dams that had been breached, and also ice dams that had been created throughout rivers. Some of these ice chunks were the size of semis. They demolished not just farmsteads, but whole cities came in and experienced extensive damage because of the ice in the water. We had many residents that, as depicted here in the town of Pacific Junction, Iowa, many residents that were never able to return home. And those that did, as you can well imagine, faced monumental cleanup and extreme health risks and hazards as they went about trying to recover their property. And as you can see from this picture, our farming communities were devastated, not just because of the livestock losses, but also because of the health effects that from the flooding itself. And at the Central States our partners, we quickly recognized that something needed to be done quickly to not only provide support in material support to our farming communities, but also educational support about dealing with some of these a situation that many of these farmers and ranchers had never had to deal with. I think this picture clearly shows some of the problems. We have this farmer who is, I would guess, well above 60, standing in water that was between 30 and 40 degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit, and feeding cattle that may have not had feed for several days. Many of these animals would be standing up 1 minute, and then their core body temperature would get so low they would just fall in the water, just fall over sideways. They estimated that up to 500,000 head of livestock may have been lost during this singular flood event. So as we do so well in our ag safety and health world, we gathered up our partners and started making a plan. And this happened the first day after the breach of the dam. And we we worked with not only our university, UNMC, or the University of Nebraska Medical Center. Our College of Public Health was involved. MAP International, which is a faith-based organization, came to us and asked what they could do to help. And then, of course, our friends at AgriSafe. One of the first things that we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that healthcare providers and those that were working with folks struggling would understand some of the hazards and the risks of what was going on here. So in collaboration with AgriSafe, we produced a webinar that talked about some of the risks that people would be facing, not only immediately, such as the hypothermia, but also because of the rapid increase in temperature, there was a mold bloom almost immediately, which is almost unheard of in our region in March. We also had experts talking about biological tetanus, talking about well water, and stress, mental health. What were these folks going to be facing, not just the day of or the week after the flood, but how about 6 months later? And then we knew that emergency response personnel and farm workers and their family were all in danger of not only the physical hazards, but also the biological hazards. So this webinar was produced almost, a week to the day after the breach of the dam, and then then became an enduring resource for use throughout this crisis. We were able at the Central States Center to send out information very effectively through our UNMC Today partnerships. This is our news organization at the university. We compiled resources, they compiled resources, and these were then disseminated out across our regions. We used vetted materials from CDC and others, and then created some materials, for instance, tips for coping during stress that directly focused on the effects of this flooding on our farming communities and some of the ways that they could reduce their stress during this time. And then these materials were not only put out in written form through the media, but also we included them in safety kits that were developed. So as an immediate response, again, we know farmers pretty well, and we know that they're not going to wait a minute longer than they have to get in and start cleaning up. And we were trying to think about all the hazards. Some of them surprised us, but we wanted them to have the resources that they needed. Many of the stores were flooded and closed. So we wanted to get in their hands resources, including first aid kits and some health kits, some soaps and toothpaste and toothbrush, but also cleaning materials. We knew that they were going to be out there dealing with pesticides that had been washed out of their barns. They were dealing with well water that was contaminated. They were dealing with mechanical hazards, equipment that had been flooded and moved from one site to another site. And so we wanted to provide the PPE that they may not have had on hand. So we were able, by using a lot of great volunteers, we were able to work together and pack these kits. To date, we have delivered over 2,800 of these kits across a large region, 5-state region. Pictured here, some of you may know, graduate students Alex Farfalla and Jill Oatman, and they worked tirelessly. As a matter of fact, Jill drove kits about halfway through Nebraska to get them to Broken Bow, Nebraska, where they were needed by the health department there. We had to partner for distribution. Many of the roads were washed out. It took us about a normal trip to North Bend, where Linda Emanuel lives, took about 4 hours, which would normally be about an hour trip. So when we talked about distribution, we had to figure out some very clever ways to distribute. So we partnered with our university, the center, and then we got together with the health departments, and they were actually holding their yearly meeting in Lincoln. So we were able to get about 1,200 of these kits, about a little over 1,200 of these kits delivered to the health departments in Lincoln. So we had a caravan come from the university, drive to Lincoln, and get these kits in their hands. We also worked with state agencies. Migrant Education Network was a great resource. They got these kits into the hands of our migrant workers, many of who had had their homes destroyed. Also rural medical clinics. EPA actually contacted us. They heard that we were disseminating kits and asked if we would mail kits to the Santee Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. So we did that. We had other tribal organizations that we were able to get to, and then faith organizations were great partners as well. And once they were disseminated, we started hearing reports coming back about their use and how people appreciated having these kits available. And that is the guy in the Nebraska sweatshirt is my devilishly handsome husband, Jack. He drove these kits all over the place to get them into the hands of the folks that we need them. And then Pat Wortman, standing next to him, was a UNMC student years ago, college public health student. And he actually was walking by and ended up being one of our great volunteers simply because he walked by at the wrong time or the right time, depending on your perspective. We used our UNMC PR. We wrote a series of 7 articles that went out over a 7-week time period to the local and media across our 7 states region. And it dealt with topics all the way from how do you compost animals safely in place, what's the technique of layering and getting these animals to compost correctly and safely, to what happens when you have swelling grain in your grain bins, and how can you deal with that, and actually how can you recover some of that grain that was not destroyed. So some very practical applications or tips, as well as safety tips, went out to local media. And just as a reminder, this may have been called the century flood, but we have flooding almost every spring in our region. And this is a year later, almost exactly a year later, on February 16th, 2020, we had additional ice jams. We have farm fields that will never be farm fields again because they are still underwater a year and a half later. As I'm talking to you today, there's still water standing in some of these fields. So we have folks that have lost not only their, some of their health and certainly may have had some safety issues, but also economically. So our work continues, and we continue to reach out to people who have needs. So what we recognized very quickly was this was going to happen again. And so we decided, along with all the materials and educational links and resources, that we needed to also talk about emergency preparedness and have farmers and ranchers ready for the next time this is going to happen. So we have put together, as part of our kit, included links and information on how people can be better prepared the next time that this flood event occurs. And this resource kit can be found on our website. It is also on UNL's website and UNMC's website. They have been great partners, and our extension has worked very closely with us as well to add some great information. We have materials, not only presentation materials that people can use if they are interested in talking about preparedness, flood preparedness, but we also have literature that can be downloaded, or if you contact me, I will get it printed for you and sent out. And lots of great resources available now for our farmers, so we will not be caught flat-footed next time. And I leave you with this, this view that is a center pivot for those of you that may not live where you irrigate with pivots. That stands, the top of that probably can be up to 20 feet tall, but I'm not sure about this pivot, but you can see that that water is well above, getting to the top of that pivot. And the shed that was in front of it, it has been torn down now. That is gone. But you can see the beauty in that, and we know, great quote, the strength of the team is each individual member, but the strength of each member is the team. And this work could not have been done without a tremendously effective, passionate team of workers. And I just appreciate each of the people that I got to work with on this project. So I thank you for tuning in, and I hope I have an opportunity to visit with you at some point. And if you have absolutely any needs, not only for flood information, but have other safety and health needs, please remember to contact me or someone else that is part of the Central State Center for Agricultural Safety and Health. Thank you.